Hello, everyone. I am happy to once again be joined by Claire Wurtzel from Funny Food Art, who is an author and grandmother. But this time she's not joined by her husband Bill, but instead with her granddaughter Daniela. And today we are going to be highlighting their special relationship. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, Claire, as you know, at Flawless, we always like to start with a sincere check in. So, Claire, I'll start with you. How are you really doing right now?
Well, it's not always easy, but there are a couple of things that help us for sure. Um, Bill and I are busy writing our fifth book, and that keeps us busy. I also try very hard to build in some exercise classes that I do on Zoom, and that helps keep me fit. And we eat well, Trey, you know that.
Definitely.
So that's another important part of our lives. And sometimes I even send food over to Daniela and her mom, since they live nearby. Always healthy food, so that helps. And lastly, but probably the most important, or one of the most, is to find time to laugh. Because we do believe that laughing is the best medicine, especially in times like this. So that's what we do to kind of stay steady.
I love all of that. And so Daniela, how are you doing right now?
I'm actually pretty good. I've been doing online school, and since I don't get to see my friends in person, I do call them a lot. I talk to them over text and FaceTime, and I also do try to see them outside for socially distanced visits while still being safe. And I think I've been handling it pretty well. So.
No, that's awesome. Appreciate you, being responsible and whatnot, but staying connected. That's always great. And, so as I mentioned before, the last time we got together, it was a little bit different because we were here with Bill and we talked about the creation of funny food art. So, Daniela, I want to ask you, what's it like to have two awesome and just creative grandparents in Claire and Bill?
Well, I think it's really nice because we all, I think, are creative in our own ways. So, my grandfather and I are both artists, and my grandma is a writer. And I also enjoy writing in school. So, it's nice that we all get to share our creativity together. So, with my grandfather, he used to teach me how to play guitar, and I make art with him. And my grandma, I obviously read with her and I garden with her on her terrace. So it's just nice that we all get to spend time together.
Awesome. And you've kind of alluded to what, the main focus of this conversation is, and that's you and your grandmother reading together. So I mentioned that tradition a little bit earlier. So you have this tradition where you read books together and then you talk about it and discuss what you read. So Claire, tell us, how did this all begin?
Well, actually, Daniela and her family live next door. And so ever since she was able to come to our apartment on her own, I guess about a year and a half, she would come and I'd be waiting for her at the door. And she loved to have me read to her. We had a whole, what was the situation? I would give you a surprise food, maybe apples or raisins or almonds when she was a little older. We didn't have almonds when she was little. And she would sit on the sofa and we would read together. And that was a big part. Do you want to say anything about that, Daniela?
I just think it was so nice to have someone read to me, and it was just a great experience.
Mm-hmm. And and then when the COVID-19 kind of hit us in New York, and Lisa and her mom were out more in the world than Bill and I, and we're older, and so we really didn't spend time together for quite a while. And I missed having time with Daniela. And so, and I read about this book, Stamped. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Ibram Kendi wrote an adult book, a Stamped from the beginning. And then he and Jason Reynolds, who writes young adult books, got together and took all the same concepts about the history of racism and why we're not taught that in school. And I thought this would be a good book for Daniela and me to read together. And so I bought 2 copies of the book, and I gave one to Daniela and I kept one. And we would read a few chapters separately. Daniela didn't want to read together because she's grown up and she prefers reading on her own. Although Bill still likes when I read to him, so I don't know. But Daniela would read a few chapters and let me know when she was finished, and then we would get together and talk about them. Now, I'm a teacher, but the last thing I wanted to do was be her teacher. So I didn't demand that she do a journal. I made some suggestions, but I didn't press it because really I wanted it to be a conversation between us.
Wow, I love that. And what I really love about that is this everything is surrounding reading. Like there's so many different ways to stay connected, especially in 2021 where most of us are focused on technology and whatnot. But you guys got to the old-fashioned route. And so it's definitely impressive for you, Danielle, at such a young age to be so engulfed in reading. So, what about reading is it for you that just kind of got you going, that just kind of sparked this? Why reading?
Well, I just think, well, in school last year, we learned a lot about the Civil War and slavery. But this book in particular, I just thought would be great because it kind of repeated what we previously learned in school, but the authors also shared their opinions on it. So it was nice to learn about these events from a more personal point of view rather than my teachers last year explaining it from a more educational point of view. So I like to have those different perspectives. And I just think reading in general is nice because you get to learn about different events and also you get the narrator's or writer's perspective on the situation.
That's very important, Daniela. And also both of these writers are African American as opposed to be the white teacher. So it's another perspective, right?
Yeah, and that's super important for what's going on right now with, racial justice being such a dominant conversation in the news right now. So that's awesome to hear. And do you have the book with you right now, Claire? If you want
Yes,
to, if you
yes.
want to show it, awesome, awesome. Love to see that. And I'm glad you guys picked this book. So I want to ask both of you. I guess we'll start with you, Claire. You know, in reading the book, what's kind of been the highlight from the reading or from the stories that you've had that you want to share with everyone?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would just want to say that we did this on FaceTime. So we got to see each other, which I think was important for me. I don't know if Daniela thought it was important, but for me, it was important to see her little face as we were talking. I think, as I've shared with Daniela, I was a history teacher, and even I found things in this book that I had never heard about before. So a lot of history of American history of slavery and racism did not get mentioned at all in when I was growing up. So that drew me to the book to begin with because I read a review, and it was really important for me to share what was new for me and what I already knew and what I deepened. And when we read it, Daniela and I both shared. We would read something and then we would each talk about our own experiences, how the content related to each of us, or in Daniela's case, to a friend. That to me was the most powerful thing. The history of racism is so embedded in this world that we don't really understand, going back to the 14th century.
Wow, that's really powerful. And it goes to show the power in reading and just all the information and the context that we don't have. It seems like in today's world, with a phone or a tablet, you get all the information you want in a snap of a finger, but there's nothing like reading a good old book. So definitely glad
Right.
that you highlighted it. Daniela, do you have a similar insight, or what was the most powerful thing about the book for you?
Well, kind of going back to what I said, how I previously learned about some of the events discussed in the book, but at school, we just kind of learned bits and pieces of the history. But what I liked about this book in particular was it explained the origin, and it kind of went in chronological order of all the events, and some of them overlap to what I already learned. But I like that I could connect um, the history of it to what's currently happening right now. And also in the book, they did discuss some of the current events. So I like that they kind of mixed history and current events.
And just the other day, I called you, do you remember, just to talk about when unfortunately there was the riot last week on Wednesday at the Capitol, and there were so few police. And I called Daniela to say, can you imagine if it were the Black Lives Matter, what the difference would be? So that racism is not just in this book. It's unfortunately all around us.
Wow. And everything that you're saying is things that we've talked about at Flawless. So it's so encouraging to hear this and to see that you're both learning about this and whatnot, and being able to share this with the world. And I love that. I also love the fact that it's not just reading and that being that, like you guys read together. You also take the next step and discuss it and write things down. And you know, Claire, is that just the teacher in you that decided to do this, or why was it so important for you guys to discuss the material you're reading after reading it?
It just seems natural, right? I mean, even when Daniela was, I still remember when Daniela was about 2 years old, we were reading, what was the name of Peter Rabbit? A Peter Rabbit book, and the grandmother, the mother in the books tells her son, don't try to go into Mr. what's his name's garden. I forgot his name, because you may end up in a pie like your father. And Daniela was listening and said, how does she know that he ended up in a pie? So I think way back, we always stop and talk about what we're reading.
That's awesome.
And discussing it and connecting it to our lives.
And like everything about this is just so important. Like here at Flaws, we've been really pushing out the importance of connectivity, and in general, I think it's so important. A lot of times, especially in a situation with our older adults who oftentimes lose some of that connection with family members or just with the outside world. And then on top of that, with COVID, that just really was amped up. But it seems like you and Daniela have found the perfect scenario where you guys can FaceTime, stay connected, discuss things. So Claire, like, what does that mean to you, especially as an older adult who may be seeing some of these things, to have that connectivity with your daughter despite all these challenges? Excuse me.
Granddaughter, yeah. It's very powerful. It means the world to me. It just, when Daniela would say, okay, what 3 chapters, what are the next chapters we should read? It was like, yes, we're getting to the next chapter. And it did take us quite a while, because I said Daniela had a lot of homework and other books that she was reading in between. But that this was, and it continues to be so powerful that I shared it with lots of my friends who are also grandparents.
Definitely. You guys are definitely the example, and we'd love to see it. So Danielle, do you have any final thoughts on that too, on what this relationship and what this tradition that you guys have started means for you?
Well, I definitely think it's important to connect with everyone because I would definitely consider myself as a very social person, and to go from, seeing my friends every day at school and going to my grandparents' house twice, 3 times a week for dinner, and now not getting to do that is a big change. And I think just finding small ways to connect with those people is really important.
That's awesome. And I think there's gonna be plenty of people who see this interview and you're gonna inspire them to do the same or do something similar. But as we know, we just turned into a new year. So before I get to my last question, I want to ask you guys: do you guys have any New Year's resolution or goals or anything that you want to talk about? Anything you're working on this year? I guess we start with Claire.
Okay. Well, what Daniela and you both said, Trey, is very important, is staying connected with friends and family is very important. I think I call friends and family members now more than I ever did, just to stay connected, or drop an email, text. Just it feels good, and I know it feels good for them. So that's very, very important. And um, it also gives me a sense of hope, you know, that sense of, yeah, we're all here, we're separate, we're like little pigeons in our own little boxes, but we are still connected. Um, and of course, the fact that scientists were able to develop this vaccines in less than a year, how could I not feel hopeful? You know, things are tough, they're very hard, but to think that it could be that we waited 10 years and couldn't find a vaccine that would work. And here within a year, less than a year, we are already, you know, Bill and I will get our vaccinations next week, and we're very excited. Who thought we'd be excited getting a vaccination? But we feel a sense of hope for the future, you know.
Definitely, definitely, and I love that. I'm glad that you guys are in line to get the vaccine. So kudos to you. And so Daniela, is there anything that you're working on this year, or any goals that you have in mind?
Well, I'm applying to high school right now, and I just really hope that I can meet new people at my new school, and that I get to still have the same experience as I would if COVID wasn't around. I do hope that by the time I go to school next year that COVID will be gone, but if it still is around, I hope that I can still meet people the same way, and still have the same friendships that I would have had.
Awesome. Best of luck to you on your applications, and I'm also hoping that things get back to normal when it comes to our education. Definitely. So, my final question for you all is, we have this concept of being flawless, right? And for me, I see flawless as something that our founder Janine says all the time is seeing the perfection in everybody. So, I guess we'll start with you, Daniela. When you hear the term flawless, like what does that mean to you? What does being flawless mean to you?
I guess being perfect comes to mind, not having any flaws or any problems. So just being perfect, I guess.
Awesome. And you are definitely perfectly imperfect. And what about you, Claire? What does being flawless mean to you when you hear that concept?
Well, I think we are all flawless in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody has something that they are working on, or are thinking about working on. And I just take a second and say, you know, when you're a teenager, and Daniela, you might appreciate this, you might be beautiful, handsome, wonderful, but you have a pimple on your forehead. And when you look in the mirror, what do you see? You don't see the gorgeous person, the handsome guy. You see only the pimple. And I think uh, we're flawless if we don't just focus on the pimple, but we focus on the whole human being.
And that's a beautiful answer and a great way to end the conversation. I want to say thank you to you both. Daniela,
Could
you're
I just share? I'm sorry. Could I just share for a minute what some of the things that my friends are doing with their grandchildren?
please, please do, please
If
do.
you could stay on, Daniela. Yeah, because I just think that it might inspire.
Yes, I
I
really
mean,
love that.
a couple of my friends, one friend whose grandchildren are in Australia, and the way she keeps in touch because she can't fly to Australia now, um, is that she reads to the child. And 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 sometimes the parents, and this is where you need the connection. Not only, I mean, Daniela is on her own now, she doesn't need her mom, but if you're 2 years old or 6 years old, you really can't do this interactive without a parent helping the child. And so, my friend would tell her daughter, this is the book that I want to read with Santa. So if you have it, then I can share it with her and we can show pictures and share. Um, I have another friend who is using funny food. She has a 6-year-old grandchild, and they look at the funny food book, and then she tells her daughter what products to buy, like to get pita bread and carrots and tomatoes. And together, my friend, the grandma, starts making something, and the child is watching it and does the same kind of thing as best as she can. And they have a good time interacting using a book to do something else. And this same grandma was just told me yesterday, she texted me that her granddaughter didn't want to read, didn't want to look at a book, but she has a craft set up to make bracelets with little stones. And so my friend said, well, let me see them. And she picked out the colors she wanted, and the child made her a bracelet while they were on Zoom. So those are just some examples of the kinds of things that you can do together. I think sometimes grandparents, they wave, they smile, then they don't really know how to keep the interaction going. And I think you have to take the lead from the kid, obviously, and see where it goes. You might just want to sing a song together, or tell a joke, but to kind of keep it so that it's more than just looking at each other and smiling and being, that. So I just wanted to share some of those ideas.
Nope, thank you. I mean, just connection is so important right now. So thank you for sharing that so much. And between you, your friends, and you, Daniela, like, you guys are going to inspire so many people. And you're showing that inspiration comes from all places, all ages, all people. So thank you so much for sharing that and sharing everything during this conversation. I really appreciate you guys joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Of course. Enjoy the rest of your day.